Good evening. I had to remember whether it was morning or evening. Good evening, captive audience. You're welcome to captive audience. Is Don Anderson and Sunny Danforth welcoming you to another wonderful Wednesday. Say good evening, Sunny.
Good evening, Don. And I'll tell you, we're still winning. Every day
We
we're
are
still
winning. I
winning.
love
I'm
that.
so glad.
It, when you wake up in the morning, it just brings a smile to your face.
Yes, yes, I'll say.
I love winning,
So I'm happy.
and
It's challenging still a lot, but I'm still happy that we're winning.
well, and just to give an indication of just how much we're winning, how about Trump being put on the magazine cover sheet of The Enemy, Time magazine? Who would have thought that possible, say, even 6 months ago?
Yeah, man of the year. Man of the year. Not just the cover, but
Yeah,
named him man of the year. I mean, that was huge. And there's people. It's big. I'm liking seeing the Trump effect of what is happening in many areas here in America, but frankly across the world. There is so much happening, and um, and it is because Trump was reelected.
and not reelected, be reelected in a historic landslide. It's one of these cases where it was too big to rig. And that is exactly what happened. To win the electoral college in a landslide is one thing, but then to win the popular vote on top of that is entirely another. And the
Yeah,
complete burial of the legacy media has to be one of the biggest wins to this. That they can no longer go free reign, lie through their teeth about everything all the time. And the significance of him being a man of the year on Time magazine, the very magazine that spent the last like 6 years excoriating him, and by definition, of us, is a pretty huge win. And I think one of the other things that came out of this, of course, is the fact that now we're seeing lawsuits against the legacy media for their outright lying. And we already have a successful one as well, with the ABC News having to pay 16 million to Trump, and Stephanopoulos personally being held accountable to the tune of one to account. That that is a tremendous win.
yes, it is. I'll tell you,
It's
it is a
volume to the
huge
success.
win. Yeah, it does. I don't know. We're having
Yeah,
a little technical challenges here. I don't know if it's you or me, but so audience, please bear with us. But it's a
right. Yeah,
huge
some people.
win with ABC holding George Stephanopoulos accountable to his lies.
And there'll be more of the same, from what I understand, too. So there's more lawsuits coming.
As there should be. As there should be. It's
Yeah.
the man's been put through the ringer and lied about so much. So I'm glad to see the pushback. He's got the wind at his back.
Yeah. It really, it's a reflection of the will of the people, too, because people are not watching those anymore. So their ratings are dropping so precipitously that they're having, remember, they're not doing this because of integrity, because goodness knows they don't have any of that. But they're doing it because they're losing money and are losing a fortune because people aren't watching them anymore because they've destroyed their credibility. So, if you lie, it always comes back to bite you, right? It's biblical.
Yeah, absolutely. It's best to always tell the truth. You don't ever have to remember it, you know? You could just have, you don't have to try to remember something when you just
It's,
speak the truth.
yes, absolutely. So I thought I'd off with a little shift here. I found an interesting article about the government setup that's allowed us to go through so many rabbit holes because it's so fascinating. Now, in the old days when you got what we called, you would be in the grocery store line behind someone and they would use the food stamp thing, right? And you would see it. And of course, you'd see what they were buying. And a lot of people were buying things that were inappropriate. Well, now what we're seeing more and more is that the government, the lobbyists for these fast food companies, junk food companies, have managed to get themselves on the list of things you can buy with what they call SNAP. I can't remember what SNAP stands for, but it's the equivalent of the old welfare program. So now people are buying things like Twinkies, donuts, Ho-Hos, Fritos, Coca-Cola, right? Pepsi. They're buying all this garbage being subsidized on the government's, government, I should say, on our, because people are being encouraged to eat badly. And the very people who are normally on these programs are kinds of people that don't have a very good job, don't do a very good job of eating in a healthy fashion. So we see what? We see a tremendous upswing in levels of obesity, hypertension, diabetes, all of these diseases, which shortens their health, shortens their lives, makes their health worse, and makes them more dependent on the government. Also, by the way, fuel drive for more pharmaceuticals that can be used to treat these disorders that the government helps subsidize and cause in the first place. It's just this vicious circle of government life that we're creating with this welfare program. It's absolutely horrendous. And to give you a sense for just how big it is, also the SNAP program, food stamps, $67 billion in 2016 was spent on that. And of that amount, 22% or $15 billion was spent on the category of salty sweets, prepared desserts, candy, sugar. That accounted for 22% of the purchases, or $15 billion. Absolutely insane. And I do hope that this is one of the things that Department of Government Efficiency with RFK and that company take a hard look at right off the bat. Your thoughts, Sonny?
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And so when you're talking about fast food
Mhm.
and junk food, there's little nutrition, especially if you're eating Twinkies and Ho-Hos and chips and drinking soda. There's very little nutritional value in that. Where's it's meat, eggs, dairy, things, higher protein, and less processed. But now to have a card that you can go even to fast food places with, um, that's it's just unbelievable to me because it doesn't seem to be about the
Yeah. Oh,
nutritional.
it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And I hope so.
Yeah.
You
And
got
what's
something
worse,
popping up on your end, and I think that's
yeah,
what's affecting
well,
your link there.
yeah, I almost wonder if should I try getting out and coming back in? Is it, can you hear me
Nope,
clearly
we're
now?
gonna roll with it, girl. We're rolling with this, Dawn.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. We're going to keep rolling. So one other thing I would add with this, that's another thing associated with this whole government subsidizing, also teaching people really bad spending habits as well. Because one of the first things you learn when you leave your home and you start buying food on your own is how much more expensive eating out is than eating in the home. I remember running the math on this one time, when my kids were small. What happened was, I think it's a great story because it's really illustrative of just how bad it is. So I think the food bill was running something like around $500 a month for a family of six, right? So we we stopped at the McDonald's because I was dumb enough to be out and about and didn't have food, and the kids were cranky and hungry. And so I stopped at McDonald's, and it was like $30 for a family of six to get your standard, you know, burger, fries, and a drink. Well, now that sounds cheap, of course, given that'd probably be about $70 now. But back then, it was like 30, and I was mortified. So I went home and did the math, and I think I calculated that it costs about, I think it was like $3 or $4 a day per person, $3 a day per person, no, $3 a meal per person if you just bought food at the store, right? And if you did that math, So let's see, this is $9 a day times 30 days, 270. It was like $5 a day, right? That's what it was. So $5 a day, 30 days in a month, $150 for one person times six, and you do your math, right? And that's still a bit expensive. So if you do the same thing, uh, a meal at the fast food joint then was like $10. Well, if you do the math on that, you can see immediately it's like 300% more. And so it's horrifying. And we're not only giving these people an opportunity to buy food that's literally killing them,
Right.
from a health perspective, it's also killing them financially and keeping them uh, in a situation where they're always dependent on the government. Now, I don't know if that's strategic on purpose or just a happy coincidence for leftists, but either way, that's how it works. And hopefully, it's one of the things that Vivek and company will fix post haste.
Yeah, absolutely. And it needs to be. And I think your number was a little bit short. If you had a family of six today going through McDonald's, it's going to be more than $70. I bet you it's over 100. It's
Oh,
crazy. I mean, I don't actually, and you might be right. I don't go through McDonald's, so I don't know. But I'll tell you, I've gone to our local non-brand name fast food joint.
mhm.
My husband says, "Hey, let's. I want a bacon cheeseburger and fries," and I go, "All right, I'll go get it." And I'll tell you what, three bacon cheeseburgers and fries was like $60.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's only three, but it's real beef. I
Right,
gotta
right.
say
That's
that
true.
it's real beef. It's real ingredients. So I don't know.
And see, and there's nothing wrong with that sort of thing once in a blue moon. But
Yeah,
that's not what the people at the bottom end of the socioeconomic scale are not doing that once in the blue moon. They're doing that for pretty much every meal. Um,
right,
that's just
right.
the nature of the way they live. That's how they wind up in that situation, right? Is just making these really bad decisions financially, which of course coming from families that aren't organized and not structured. And so you don't sit down for a meal and all the other things that go along with that.
Yeah,
So you wind up eating prepared stuff all the time, which is really expensive, which is also filled with all the garbage and junk that RFK is talking about, which leads to obesity, hypertension, diabetes, all these other things, which leads to the pharmaceutical company making a fortune on them, which we as taxpayers get to subsidize that too. And you have this
yeah.
like crazy vicious cycle. And you look at like our childhood obesity rates now. I mean, we talk about this. I didn't know, I knew one fat kid growing up, like one. That's it. I mean, now they're all fat.
They are. It's
Oh,
astonishing. It's astonishing.
yeah, yeah. So that's something that we could change. Like, and that's an easy flip. That's a flip. That's a switch flip. The lobby, and it's lobbyists. It's K Street lobbyists in DC that did this. You
Yeah,
just essentially, like, nope, we're not subsidizing that stuff anymore.
yeah.
Um,
Hey, I want to answer Nimi's question. If asking if we're live on Facebook, it doesn't look like it. And actually, I didn't realize this that we're not on Facebook tonight. So we're on X and YouTube.
mhm.
So I don't know what happened there. You can call it operator error. That would be me tonight. So I'll try to make sure that we're on there. I'm very sorry that we're not, but I think our audience is following us. And when I put it in, when I typed an answer, it only goes. This is interesting. I cannot type something onto X, but I can on. It goes to YouTube. So I don't know. Anyway, there we are.
All right. Well, hopefully it's not I'm paranoid now. Is the government out to get us? Are we being
No,
like?
I think it was my error when I made our link
All right,
for
gotcha.
tonight. So that's what I think. I just didn't. I thought I had saw that Facebook was on there, so I just think it's my error. Sorry about that, guys.
All right. Well, things seem to have cleaned up in terms of our transmission here. Anyway, it
Yes,
looks
it has.
hesitation and all that stuff's gone. So whatever that was, it's working again. Uh,
Yay.
yes, yes, yes. Woohoo! So I had to mention, and we were talking earlier about this whole thing with the border wall. By now, I'm sure you've heard this whole thing where the Biden administration is selling the old border wall parts that have been laying around for the last 4 years at pennies on the dollar. I mean, you got to love these guys, right? You know, a new administration is coming in. You know, the will of the people is to build the wall that you tore down or didn't allow to get built before. And so now, in order to give the American people a giant middle finger, you're going to like sell the thing off for pennies on the dollar, so we could turn around and have to buy it back at some maximal profit. It's like it's so appalling. It's one more little thing in a laundry list of stuff, but I just had to remark on it.
Well, it is, and it's astonishing. I saw on X earlier today that I believe Tom Homan, I believe it was him addressing this, saying, you know what, if you are buying this or any government agencies, if you're selling this, you are selling government goods. This is not legal what you're doing. And a couple of days ago, somebody had posted on X and said, hey, you know what? Everybody should be buying this. Go ahead and buy it for $5 and then donate it back to Trump when he's in office, and we'll just get it built. So, and I've seen trucks rolling through. I don't know how many, of course, but it is seeing that happening for sure. And it just, with what Biden and the unelected bureaucrats are doing, it's just more, it shows us how much the disdain is for the American people. We were talking a little about this before we came live and on a different topic, but this is another topic that shows the disdain for the American people, that they want to thwart an incoming president. That's not what we do. You know what? As much as I didn't care for Biden or Obama, the thought to do something against another incoming president never crossed my mind.
What I think we're seeing, and we have to get used to this, and this is very hard because the average American, and people from all over the world will comment on this, is the average American is very kind. They'll comment on how kind and nice we are and how generous this country are. And the data shows that we give more than any other country in the world. And that shouldn't surprise anyone. But so because of that, we have a hard time conceptualizing true evil, I think, or really understanding there are people who are devoid of consciousness, if you will. And Marxists are devoid of conscience. The only thing they respect is the acquisition of power. Money is nice, and money is only good insofar as it can deliver them power. But at the end of the day, all they want is power. They view us as subjects, and they view themselves as kings and queens, and people to be told what to do, and they're going to do that. And their objective is a one world order with just themselves in power. They don't believe in a constitution. They don't care about voting. They only say those things because they get them to power. And the quicker you understand that, the better off you are in terms of dealing with them. That's what they are about. And what we're seeing now that they pulled the mask off, what we've seen for the last 4 years, is what they're willing to do to get it. They're willing to assassinate a president. They're willing to do that. They're willing to not provide him with Secret Service. They're willing to not provide the son of a former president who was assassinated with Secret Service protection. It's incredible the lengths that they're willing to go. And the sooner that we realize that about them, the better off we are. Now, the rank and file, I'm not saying the rank and file Democrat is that way at all, but the leadership class of these people, that's the way they think. And the more you understand that, the better off you are.
Well, I agree with that 100%, because that's exactly what has been shown to us in so many levels. So I'm just glad that there's a new administration coming in. I'm getting really excited about that. And the changes that are going to be coming, like to even the SNAP program.
Yep. So it's going to be on. It's so many levels where it needs to be changed. And what I love is the energy they're bringing. They're not talking about one thing here or two things there. They're going after the entire thing, which is exactly what you need to do. You need to make them try to fight. It's very hard to fight a multi-front war. And that's precisely what this incoming administration is doing. I think one of the things that's kind of cool about this as well is you look at the aging, I'll call it the aging Democrat leadership. I saw this, I can't remember what news feed where I saw this, but we've witnessed over the last 4 years retirements of these dinosaurs. I mean, just to name a few of them. So Dianne Feinstein was 91 when she died with her hand on the lever of power. She just couldn't let go, right? Basically, with the feed that is doing the IV drip, right, to their last breath. You got Patrick Leahy, 84, Dick Shelby, 90. Jim Clyburn died in office also 84. Bernice Johnson died in office like 89. You remember the Supreme Court justice? I can't remember the one they tried to keep her in office as long as possible because they didn't want, almost said Reagan, they didn't want Trump to replace
Ginsburg.
Yes, yes. I mean, like just, I mean, at death's doorstep. And it's so neat to see. And I have nothing against older people being in office as long as they got their energy wit, because that's not a blanket statement. Not everybody goes out like that. And Trump is a perfect example of that, for example, right? But the people Trump is just on his team he's bringing in, Tulsi Gabbard's 43, Pete Hegseth's 40, Cash Patel is 44, Harmeet Dillon, she's 55, Jay is 56, Jay Baccarati, the doctor, Vivek's 39, Elon Musk is 53. So it's the new wave, it's the next generation coming behind us that'll have the energy to pursue these policies. And it's so great to see that, which will be attractive to that next generation of voters who are coming along. So it's really cool to see this happen.
Well, it is real. Yes, it is really cool seeing this happening, and talk about change. What happened today? So much pressure with this omnibus bill that they're, parading as a CR, a continuing resolution, that is so full of pork, and yet Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, but Donald Trump or Elon and Vivek said, anybody who votes for this, you're going to get primaried in 2 years. They have killed the bill. Last night, I was on X last night, and Vivek says, okay, I've got it. I'm reading it. And this morning, he produces an analysis, and said, no, we got to shut this down. And somebody else on X had said, well, you could pass the first 9 pages and forget the rest. And this is where the spending, you have people, conservatives, that are going, oh yeah, we're for making the government smaller, but they won't do a damn thing unless they're pressured about it.
Mm-hmm.
They won't on their own volition, vote against it. And so, but the blanket statement by Vivek and Elon saying anybody, they didn't say just Democrat or Republican. They said anybody who votes for this, you're going to get primaried in 2 years. And so, as I understand right now, that is dead. And Johnson's got to come back with a clean, continuous resolution. Otherwise, shut it down. Yesterday, I live in the 2nd Congressional District here in Oregon, in Umatilla County. And I messaged my congressman and Cliff Bentz, and I said, Cliff, CD2, while in Oregon, Trump didn't win the popular vote of Oregon. Believe me, he won 3/4 of the state. Okay. And the whole east side, which is CD2, I said, CD2 voted for Trump. That is a mandate from your district to vote no on this massive spending bill. And today I said, shut it down on X. Shut it down. I don't care. Shut it down. Let the new Congress that's coming in deal with this.
Yeah. And what that is, hey, we've let them play hardball with us for 40 years. Chickens are coming home to roost. They made it very clear they only respond to one thing. And I'm not talking about necessarily just like you, not necessarily leftist Democrats. We got a ton of rhinos who need to feel the heat. And it's great that we're being able to say things like "you'll be primary." I love it when we turn something into a verb. You'll be primaried.
Right. Right.
But that's exactly what needs to happen. Just like that group of people who voted for for Trump to be impeached, two Republicans. I think there
Mhm.
were 13 of them, and 11 of them got the boot. One of them being that clown from Wyoming. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. Um, uh,
Cheney.
Cheney. One of them being Cheney. So that needs to be done across the board because those
Yes.
people are just as big an enemy as the Democrats. In some ways, maybe even more so because they're hidden. They fly around with an R behind their name and they pretend like they're on this side of conservatives. But as soon as there's a little resistance, they just roll over, right? So these people need to be held accountable. And I'd love it if they just got blasted out of office. If they would do things because they should be doing it, as opposed to doing it because they have a gun to their head. But if you have
Right.
to have a gun to your head, then that's what it takes. That's what we have to do.
Yeah, that is what it takes. And we need to. I'm so excited for what is coming because of the um, Department of Government Efficiency. This is huge. We need to shrink our government, and we need to make it more accountable to the people, and let Congress actually do their job instead of the unelected bureaucrats. This is not and not going along to get along. We need to take care of our country or we're going to lose it. And this is the perfect opportunity. Uh, we're in the perfect opportunity to do just that. Thank God. Only because Trump won. And we would be going. It would be a whole going the way we were had Harris won this election. I mean,
Oh,
she's just awful. And it would be status quo. And look at all the damn spending that Biden is doing.
oh,
You
it's
know,
and,
it's
and this is as a lame duck. He's doing this crazy stuff. Like what you just
yeah.
talked about. Were they trying to give themselves a 20% raise or something? At the
Well,
last
I
minute?
read 40%. I read a 40% raise on this omnibus, and I'm going to call it an omnibus because that's exactly what it was. The thing is so full of pork
Mhm.
and crazy, just crazy.
Yeah.
You know
See,
what? We know that the districts rely on some federal money. We know that there are people affected from the hurricanes and FEMA using FEMA money, taking care of illegals that shouldn't be in our country in the first place. Instead, we know we have to help them. And believe me, as soon as Trump is in, it's going to happen.
yeah.
But passing something like this, oh, I've got to help my people, because of that.
Of course,
Baloney.
it's always
So,
buried somewhere. It's never in the light of the day. It's always buried in some place they don't have to talk about it, right? So at a time when, as a result of their actions, Congress's actions in cahoots with
mhm.
Biden, we got inflation running 30% over what it was like 4 years ago. We can't give ourselves a 30 or 40% raise, but these guys at the swipe of a pen can give themselves a 30 or 40% raise on your dime.
Right.
You know,
That's
you
that's
know,
the thing. It's on our dime.
yeah,
No
yeah.
kidding. Yeah.
When the economy's down, um, I don't care what they say with their statistics about the economy not being down. It's down. And that's another one of the great things about what they've been doing. You can't lie about this stuff because we all go grocery shopping, right? We all see the price of housing. We all got kids trying to go to school, right? We know you're lying. Um, and it's funny. Lies always come back to bite you, and they certainly have this time around.
Well, they have. Remember, just not very long ago, we had Thanksgiving, right? Last month. And and Biden's going, "Oh yeah, prices are way down. This is the most, inexpensive Thanksgiving ever." Forget it. Forget it. Everybody's going, "I'll just buy, a turkey breast. Forget the bird,
Oh yeah,
or a
right,
chicken, a big
right.
chicken
Pretty
because
soon
it
we'll be
was
all eating a can of spam on Thanksgiving.
that's the truth. That's the truth.
If liberals have their way, that's exactly what will be happening. But all of this, I think, too, gives us a great opportunity, and we all need, and hopefully, some of the folks from this administration will begin the job of explaining the proper role of government. Now, this hardly comes up, and I know that's a deeper conversation, but we need to help people, help our fellow citizens understand why large government's bad. When the founders put together the country, the primary thing they were afraid of was big government. The whole thing is designed to keep it small. It's a necessary evil, and when it gets big, crazy stuff starts to happen, like we've just seen. The worst among us gravitate towards power. You put that much money in one spot, then you're just asking for it. And that's what we've seen. So that's got to be explained, I think, to the general public. And that's another one of the reasons why the public school system's got to be, I want to go so far as to say dismantled. Massive competition needs to be presented with it, because that system's infiltrated with Marxists who believe in this stuff. And that's one of the things that makes me most excited about this administration, is desire to take down the Federal Department of Education. I think that is like one of the best things ever.
Absolutely. Oops, message on my screen that said
Mhm.
something. Said I was disconnected for a second.
Yeah, you did freeze for a second. Oh, here's one more data point. Let's see. I saw this data. American Principles Project showed that 70% of the enforcement actions by the Biden and Harris administration's education department was against faith-based and career schools. 70%. So the government's been basically weaponizing itself to destroy private home, private school, Christian school education. And there's a reason for that, because Marxists hate Christianity. One of the first things they do is they go to destroy the family and destroy the education system. And many of their leaders have said, you can keep everybody else, but as long as I got the kids, I'm going to win in the long run. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what the likes of Marx, Engels, all of those guys said. And we need to go back to educating people around this is their purpose in the long term. Are you frozen, Sonny? Can you hear? Can you hear me, Sonny? I said her private chat. Hopefully she can hear me over there. It looks like she's frozen. Hopefully you all can still hear me, but I'll just keep rolling along then until things come back online. There was another interesting what was this case I saw on a judge laying. Are you there? Are
Oh,
you there, Sonny?
I am
Okay.
here now. I don't know
Okay.
what happened.
All
Sorry,
right. Yeah.
guys. I had a thing that said it was reconnecting, so that's
Okay.
okay. I'll switch places with you. What the heck?
Okay, very good. That'll work. All right. I was just I've been waxing eloquent on something or ineloquent, and now I can't even remember what it was. But here's what it
Well, we
was.
were talking about the education system and the need
Right.
for competition, and it going
Yes.
back to the states. Get the feds out of
Right.
it, and
Get the feds
we
out of
need
it.
competition. The money follows the student. Students can go to
Mhm.
anywhere. That's what's needed. We
Yes.
need to get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic,
Yeah. And
STEM.
ultimately, I think that's better than. I mean, yes, it's good to pass laws that say public schools can't chop up your kids and do things behind your back without your knowing. Okay, definitely need to do that. But more important than that, I think, is giving parents an opportunity to choose, because then parents can look at that a system that do I want to send my kid to a school that's going to teach them to hate. To hate white people and love and hate themselves and all that racist stuff they teach, and one that's going to give my kids contraceptives without me knowing about it, is going to encourage my daughter to change her body parts to become a boy. Do I want that? The general public generally doesn't want that stuff, and given a choice, they would opt out of it. So if their money just followed them, they would go away from it without us having to pass all these. Unfortunately, we're going to have to do this with these laws, but it'd be better if people selected for themselves. And so, to the degree that we can do that, that's going to be a really good thing to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah. So then it was another one of these things. It was and this goes back to the DOG. I'm so excited about this Doji project they're putting together because another outfit that hugely benefits from these funds is Planned Parenthood. I think the federal government I saw gives something like $330 million a year. Again, our money going to fund something that the vast majority of us disagree with. Of course, they touted this women's health, but you and I both know where the vast majority of the profit comes from that thing, and it ain't from like health services. So to see them take a hard look at that too, and like, no, we shouldn't be forced to fund stuff that we 100% don't believe in. That whole thing, like NPR, all of that ought to be privatized. Why in the world do we need NPR? That's another one. So every one of these things, it's just great to finally see some. I've been thinking this for the last 30 years. Finally see someone come along and just take all of this stuff apart. I feel like shouting from the roof.
Well, earlier you brought up such a great, I agree with that. Earlier you brought up such a great point, and it is about educating the American people about what government ought to look like. That's a huge deal. And we've talked a little bit about that before, you and I, Don, because Americans, they don't understand and I think the majority don't understand that actually less government equals more freedoms and more choices and more freedoms. We're a country based on free enterprise, and competition is a good thing. And what's been going on is getting things to while monopolies are not supposed to be legal in the United States, there's been a lot of the companies have been gobbled up, so they're big conglomerates.
Mhm.
But having less government, and I think some people might be fearful of that. People don't like change; they generally resist it, and I think they would be resisting the unknown. So I like what you were saying of how to educate people, and I think that would be a great thing for the Trump administration to help educate people on what smaller government looks like. You doesn't mean that we can't offer hand help to people when they need it, but it never should be a way of life. And it doesn't mean that we don't care. I think it means that we care more.
Yeah, and I think what it comes down to is, gosh, if people really understood, if they, before you vote, you should know the constitutional principles. If you understood the constitutional principles, use those as a guide to how you vote. And one of the things that one ought to keep in mind is, if how free are you? A slave is someone who pays 100% of what they make to the slave master. That's a slave, right?
Mhm.
So as taxation approaches 100%, how different are you from a slave? The only difference between you and a slave, you're being taxed at above some number. The only difference between you and a slave is a slave has a whip, he has a whip and puts you on the whipping post. Other than that, you're the same as a slave. Communism is just slavery by another name. And studies have shown, generally speaking, and I think it's almost biblical as well, that when most people are comfortable with taxes at about 20%. You don't see in countries that have taxation overall at around 20%, you don't see tax evasion and all this crazy stuff because people generally feel like, yeah, 20%, that's fair. 25%, I can live with that, right? But as taxes start to exceed 30%, you start seeing tax avoidance because inherently we know that it's becoming not fair. When it gets above 40, say 50%, you got outright tax evasion going on. You look at a country like Italy where nobody pays taxes. Tax rate is like 80%. They're not collecting anything. And this goes back to the old, I think it was the Laffer curve. Arthur Laffer was the professor at Pepperdine who came up with the Laffer curve during the Reagan administration, which showed that the relationship between taxation and tax receipts, there's like an inverse relationship once you get beyond some certain percentage of taxation. I can't remember what that percentage is, but let's say it's around 25 or 30%. You start taxing me more than 30%, and the tax rate goes up, but the tax receipts go down. And it's logical. I'm going to stop working if I'm going to make the next dollar over, let's say 100 grand, and you're going to take a higher percentage of it. Well, I just won't work. Or I'll figure out how to get paid under the table.
Right.
And
Right. It does create more black market.
That's exactly what happens,
Mhm.
which turns all of us into lawbreakers, which is a whole, and you get used to breaking one law, you start like breaking the rest of them. So it turns your whole society into this dishonest thing, where everybody's a liar, which, and if you know anything about how the Soviet Union worked, East Germany, everybody lies all the time. It was so this sin, if you will, infects everyone. And so the founders understood all of that, and they knew government was a necessary evil, and you want to keep it small. So those people who are really in the, and we want to help other people. I get that. But here's where liberals have screwed up our thinking on this. They got us thinking that it's the government's job to help people, not our job to hurt people.
Right.
Churches fall into the same thing. Vote for this because, as church people will say, you should vote for this because it's helping the government's helping. No, the church's teaching is that you're supposed to do that. Somebody else isn't supposed to do that. You're
That's
not
right.
supposed to take somebody else's money. I'm going to steal from Sonny and take her money and give it to Joe because Joe needs help. No, you want to help Joe? You help Joe. that's that's
Yeah.
how it's supposed to work. And the thing that made this country so unique were these other institutions, and this wasn't seen anywhere else in the world. So you have your Lions clubs, elf lodges, your Salvation Armies, your Knights of Columbuses, the churches which were on every corner, families and extended families
Mhm.
who took care of each other. We didn't rely on the government to do that. This is a recent phenomenon. This is a phenomenon that basically started out in the 30s and 40s. Before that, that's not how it worked. And it worked better that way because now, if Joe's habits are causing him to fall in bad habits, the community is there to help Joe get over that. If the people helping Joe are 3,000 miles away, they don't see that Joe is drinking himself to death and he's not following the rules of engagement, and so they're just going to waste money on Joe. Um, so that's I didn't mean to go in that soliloquy, but that needs to be taught in
Well, it
all
does.
experiences in our life.
And it's we used to in the United States, we had extended family, multi generations living under one roof. And the reason is you're going to help take care of your parents and grandparents, and by living under the same roof, and then in turn they are going to be your babysitters while you're going out and working, right?
Sure.
And and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But as you were talking, I also reminisced of some of my travels, some of the countries. Realize I lived outside the United States for 16 years. And I've traveled to a lot of countries, not just for a day or two, but for many months,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even a few years in some places. And I can remember being in a country, I'm not going to say where, but in Central America.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a jail. And in talking to some people, learned somebody was coming to the window of a jail. And the window was really high and it was really small. And they were passing a prisoner, food. So
Mm-hmm.
I engaged in conversation and I go, so don't the jail people feed them? No, no, we feed the person that's in there. And so, our jails, I'm going to say, must be like Camp Snoopy. They've got television, air conditioned, heated, unless you were in Arpaio's over in
Mm-hmm.
Arizona. Arpaio is tents, which I thought was a real good deal.
Uh,
But there's so many countries that are like that.
mm-hmm.
In fact, you go to the hospital, you need to bring your own sheets or linens because the bed doesn't have them.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced that in another country,
Mm-hmm.
witnessed that, and was like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
that's shocking. Um, so not everywhere is like us. And do we say we need to go backwards? No, but we do need to shrink the government, and um, in many, many ways. So I look forward to Doji and clearing some of the waste out. You
Yeah.
know, like and a really great example is not an example of the Department of Government Efficiency, but Disney just pulled out of their latest movie their LGBTQ scenes out of a movie.
That's a win.
I went, wow. So I read this yesterday,
Hmm.
and the statement from Disney was something like this. I'm totally paraphrasing, was that Disney has realized that the parents would like to have some conversations with their children.
Wow.
So that means they're not going to. Disney isn't. And I went, hooray. And my mom said, well, we should go support them. I said, not a chance. I'm
Let
sorry.
they
I'm
got a
still
ways to
not
go.
doing that. But it's a start. And it's
Mhm.
because Donald Trump won the election. It's because of all of us pushing back and counseling them. Instead of us getting counseled, we counseled other businesses and said, you know what, our money, we can spend it on what we want. We
Mhm.
don't have to buy your policies. And there's power in that. And so, and I think that's a good thing. So there's DEI that is leaving Oregon businesses. They're going, okay, we're going away from that now.
Mhm.
So the pendulum is swinging the other way, and we severely need to shrink our government just severely. I'm a person who goes to county meetings. I go to city council meetings, and there's times when you go, when's enough enough?
Mhm. Yeah. And the thing is, most of us know. I mean, we all laugh about the Department of Motor Vehicles experience. We've all had that experience, right?
Oh, yeah.
We all laugh about the post office experience, right? Any of us who've experienced with, like, say, Amtrak, we laugh about those experiences. So we see what happens when we encounter the government. We see how miserable it is because the people that work there aren't incented to do better. So there's no positive incentive for doing better. There's no negative incentive for doing worse. As a result, you get bad treatment. And the type of person who is attracted to work at these places, and I'm not universally saying they're all like this, right? But let's
Mhm.
just say that a high percentage of people who don't want to do anything all day will gravitate to those roles. And I've been in government positions, and I've been just shocked at the number of people who can sit and be comfortable doing nothing all day long. And I remember being really young, and my wife had a job at a government. I'm not going to say which organization it was. And there was a guy who was like a GS-12, which is a pretty high-ranking civilian, and this person was working feverishly on the accounting machine all day long with a ticker tape. Remember in the old days they had that ticker
Oh,
tape?
yeah.
So one day after working there a couple of months, I wonder what he's working on. And she went over there and looked at the ticker tape, and the ticker tape said zero times zero times zero times zero times zero times zero all day long. And for the average Joe who works in the private sector, it's very hard for them to comprehend that there's actually
Yeah.
people who will do this. And I'm saying, I would submit to you, this is just my guess, having been in both private and government sector. 1 out of 4 government employees, is busting their humps to carry the other three. Right? And in the
Mhm.
private sector, it's the reverse. 3 out of 4 bust their hump to carry the one, because in the private sector you can't do it. You have to fire them or you'll go bankrupt. In the government sector, they just live on until they get a fat retirement check. Which is yet another reason why you have to shrink the size of government, because that 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 system I just described to you is baked in. I don't think you will ever have that be any different, because ambitious people don't go to work for the government in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I know some people that work for the government, and you're right. It's not everybody is like that, and I've heard
Right.
some quite the horror stories, and of
But I bet
what
your
you
friends,
just described happening.
yeah, I bet your friends who work there who bust in the butt will tell you, yeah, that ratio is probably about right. You know,
Yeah.
um, and you see it, and so the bigger that gets, the more of them you have floating around. I remember one particularly. This is when I was transitioning from. I was never a crazy liberal, but moderate JFK liberal to conservative. And I was talking to this teacher, and being young and thinking I could solve all problems, and people just would see things my way. I was stupid and young, right? So I had this model. What if you went to the public school system, and what if you gave them like an incentive, kind of like a sales model incentive, right? So you tested all their kids in the first grade. You're going to have these kids for eight years, right? We're going to test their scores, and every year we're going to test their scores again. And based on their test scores, we're going to give you a bonus. We'll leave your base pay the same. So let's say you're getting paid $50,000 a year as a teacher, right? You have the opportunity, depending on how well that score is, to make an additional 50. So you could double your income based on this. You wouldn't believe how the teachers I talked to hated that system. I mean, it was like I was wearing three heads and I stole their mother's money, right? And I remember like, why would they be so against something like that? And at the end of the day, I don't want to be held accountable because that means you'd be measuring performance, and they don't want it. Kid you not, couldn't believe it. Um,
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's not something I've ever, except for like going into DMV, ever have experienced or worked for. I've always worked in the private sector, had my own business,
mhm,
and invested my own money.
mhm,
It's and so therefore you paid attention, worked hard, and
mhm,
being a woman, I'm going to play a little bit of gender thing here. Being a woman that worked in a male dominated industry, there back when there wasn't any women in the industry.
mhm.
So I had to just outperform. I had to work really hard, keep my head down and just work really hard.
Mhm,
And you know what? I moved up to where then I started my own business.
mhm.
And because of working hard, and you have to in the private sector, work hard work and a strong work ethic pays off.
Yeah, and if you don't, it pays the other direction,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah,
So you got to have a carrot and stick, right?
you
And
do. You
and
do.
government employees don't have a carrot or a stick. My wife, this is the funny story. I watched her. She worked in this governmental outfit for a while, and so they decided they wanted to give the performers, because there were performers, they gave them a raise. So they had like a bucket, like a pool. So we'll give the people who perform, like say a 10% raise. But if you're going to do that, you can't give the bottom dwellers like anything. You can only give them 1% or something, right? And don't you know, once they did that, the bottom dwellers found out about it and raised so much cane that the organization reversed everything and gave everybody the same. So everybody got like 5%, right? That's how it works.
Yeah. You
That's how it
can't do
works.
that. You
No.
can't do that, and that's the problem with socialism and
Mhm,
communism is, like I remember Harris saying, look, everybody didn't start at the same level, but some are going to get more than others. No, you know what? It's nature.
mhm.
Nature is survival of the fittest. And
Yeah,
that's in the private sector industry. That is just a fact of life. And the thing is not everybody's cut out to be the chief.
yeah. And not everybody wants the same things. I mean,
No, they don't.
there are some people who value other things than money. There's people who decide to go into the religious life, spiritual life. There's nothing wrong with that. There's people who
No.
decide to want to do this certain thing because but those who chase the profit motive, let them chase the profit motive and let them reap the benefit of that. Because here's the thing that the envious leftist never seems to understand. One of the beautiful things about free market system is you can't get what you want unless you help somebody else get what they want. So it's a service model, and that's the brilliance of it. As long as you're not selling drugs, for example, but if you make a better sofa, you make a better lazy boy than the next guy. The
Mhm.
person who's willing to pay you more for that, you made their life better. Getting mad at somebody because they went and bought a yacht. Hey, if that guy goes and buys a yacht, the people who build yachts wind up like running their business better. The people who paint yachts and make yacht engines, they do great and they make more money, and they can put send their kid to school and buy their spouse that nice car, which then means the car manufacturer can go do the same thing for his kids. So it just the benefit rolls down to everyone. And then people would say, well, what are they doing? They got $100 million. It's like not fair. Well, the $100 million is not just sitting there under the mattress. And this is the things we don't explain. We got to explain to people. $100 million is out in the economy being loaned by banks so another ambitious person can start a business and do the same thing again. That's the beauty of free enterprise, but we don't explain that to people well enough.
You're right. And I'm going to add one more. That person with the 100 million took the business risk.
Yes, they took the risk.
They took the risk, and they could have failed or
and
not.
Most do.
And most do. Most do. And you keep going and you keep trying until you succeed, and that's just, that is nature.
Yeah.
That absolutely is. And it's not everybody has to be equal, because that is a system of failure. Yeah. When, like, as you said, there is no incentive. And, I'm in the government. I think their contracts have been designed so much that, well, we have to have continuity in the government. So you don't want to be able to fire these people. But you know what? There has to be a mechanism to get rid of those that are doing 0 times 0, 0 times 0.
Yeah.
It was busy work doing nothing.
It's incredible. And this is like a high-ranking person. This wasn't like a GS2 or something. We saw this with our own eyes. I know it happens. I mean, I've seen it. Gosh. Right. So, and these are relatively low-level jobs. Now, think about what happens, when you get down there on K Street, and then these people are crossing the table and being lobbyists for each other and all of that stuff. It's like unbelievable how much is being just wasted.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that principle, keep it small. It's a necessary evil. It must be kept small. What I used to tell my kids when we were homeschooling was, this is going to sound bad, but I got to keep it clean because it's a family station. But think about government as like a pile of dung, and these government people, officials, as flies. The bigger that dung is, the more flies you're going to attract, right? You got to keep the dung pile small. You'll get less flies.
Absolutely. I think some of the dung is going to get taken out.
That's right. We're going to clear out the dung heap.
So we'll get rid of some flies too.
Reduce the flies. Flies spread disease.
Okay, look, I've got 2 good news things.
All right,
tonight.
Let's end on that.
Okay.
That's a better note to end on than talking about dung.
Yeah. Senator Rand Paul has blocked a bill in the Senate that's authorizing states to track drones. And I think that's good, because that was just more government. So he's blocked it. And thank goodness, I think. The bill would have expanded state drone tracking authority, but Rand Paul had concerns over privacy and data collection. And I say, let's take a look at that. So I think that's a good thing. And right now, there's the drone scare. The drone scare. Don't worry. We know it's all okay. We don't know who it is. We're not going to tell you for sure, but it's all okay. What? Do they think we're morons?
Yes. Actually, yes.
Yes. No, we're not. We're not. And I don't believe the government. And the government is just losing more and more credibility, which that might not be a bad thing, Don.
Well, a party that would put someone like Kamala Harris in front of us and honestly have run him for president obviously thinks we're morons.
Yeah, but the scary thing is she got quite a few votes, That's the scary part.
About 30%.
And that's what we're trying to help educate others.
Yes.
We're trying to help educate you.
No.
It's I can't say I've always been conservative. I had a couple of years that I wasn't, but I quickly saw the light and came back over to being a Republican. Don is a recovering Democrat, and he's now conservative. So it's okay. It's okay. As everybody, we realize we're not all on the same page. And that's all right. We can agree to disagree, and we welcome our audience to go, hey, you know what? I don't agree with this, or I do agree, or hey, you know what? We like what you're talking about.
Well, the
That's all.
difference is
It's all
this.
good.
You got to be able to apply, I call it evidence-based reasoning. As
Yes.
long as you're not going to feeling and name calling. But if you can put evidence-based reasoning to support your position, and after that, if we still disagree, that's cool, right? And none of us are ever going to 100% of everything. But if you apply evidence-based reasoning to whatever arguments you're making, you have a much better chance to persuade people and for us to make a logical and rational decision and not one that's based on emotion. And that's all we can ask.
That's absolutely right. So that's all I've got for tonight, Don.
That sounds like a wrap. We used up every minute and then some. It seems like we keep doing this, but that's a good thing. Well,
Yes, we have. We
yeah,
have. Sorry, everybody, for the glitches that we've had. A few little, energy glitches or whatever tonight. Hey, that's what happens when you go live, and but that's okay. We know that you'll bear with us. We appreciate it. Share the message, like and share. And for those that are on Facebook, you can even post it over there for them that weren't able to see tonight. Well, they can come see us on X for sure. So I don't know what happened. We'll try to fix it. I will be back on Friday, but Dawn and I are not going to be here next Wednesday on Christmas.
so we're going to skip a week, and I'm definitely going to miss you all, but have a Merry Christmas. We can say that again, too.
Amen. Merry Christmas is right. So I hope you all have your decorations up. And by full confession, I don't. I feel bad. Don and I were talking about it beforehand. He's putting his tree up tomorrow. I'm telling on you, Don.
Yes.
And my back is really sore, and I gotta lug all this, so I don't know what I'm gonna try to get something. I'll
We don't
try to
want you to get that lump of coal in your stocking, so you better hop to
have
it.
a wonderful Christmas. We have a lot to celebrate, and remember, Jesus is the reason for the season.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas, everybody.